Hey, hello and welcome! We are Philip and Martin from SweDnD. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Today we will talk about our top 5 favorite classes in D&D 5e. Keep in mind that this is our favorite classes. That doesn't mean that they are the objective best, just the ones that we decided that we like the most.
Number 5 on our list is the Mighty Fighter, the archetypal martial class that has been there since the beginning. It takes a spot on our list because of how user-friendly it is and how it builds on the core mechanics of the game.
This, however, doesn't mean that the fighter class is boring or stale. You can still have a lot of variation with this class, especially depending on which subclass you choose to pick as your martial archetype. We have the more iconic subclasses like the Battle Master, the master of controlling the battlefield with different maneuvers, but then you also have other classes that strays maybe a bit more from the core fighter, like the Eldritch Knight or the recently introduced Echo Knight from Explorer's Guide to Vilemount.
One thing to keep in mind when playing a fighter is that it gets more chances to pick a feat than other classes, and therefore it's much easier to customize and make your own kind of fighter.
The fighter class also gets proficiency with all types of armor and all martial weapons. Since the fighter has such a big pool of equipment to choose from, you can really make your fighter stand out in what kind of weapons it will use to slay their prey. You can choose to have a sword in one hand and a shield in the other, or perhaps you prefer to wield a great two-handed weapon like a greatsword to slice your foes in half. There are even more exotic fighter builds, maybe based on dexterity, where you mainly use a longbow. This great variety in weaponry and how you choose to approach the battlefield is only further emphasized by which fighting style you pick at level 1. There are several different options that can boost your effectiveness with the current gear that you're wearing.
One possible downside with the fighter is that it doesn't really bring a lot to the table outside of combat, unless it's strength or dexterity based skill checks. Having a lack of wisdom, intelligence and charisma makes it hard to really play it on the social interactions. However, this only makes the challenge more fun, giving you the option to choose exactly how you want to play your fighter, even using your background or your tool proficiencies to further spice up your story and your character.
And don't forget that simplicity allows for creativity. Every character that can hold a weapon could technically be a fighter. Whether you're a veteran soldier, a farmhand that took his pitchfork and left home, or someone who grew up in the city and joined the city vanguard. The sky's the limit when it comes to your fighter's background and the reason that they are the fighter class. We've had a lot of experience with fighters in our games, and I have to say not one of them has felt the same. So if what we have said sounds exciting to you, then maybe you should pick a fighter to be your next character. Number 4 on our list is another iconic D&D 5e class. It's the Master of the Arcane, the spellcaster of all spellcasters, the Wizard.
The main point of this class are spells. Spells, and a lot of spells. There are powerful spells, there are utility spells, there are social spells. There's a total abundance of spells you can choose from to do virtually anything you want inside the game. We are talking about the class that can shoot fireballs out of their hands, teleport across continents, and make their entire party fly.
So as you can hear, the Wizard has a lot of interesting potential, and a lot of fun variety too. However, one major drawback is for new players playing a Wizard, it might be difficult to keep track of all the different spells that you have, which might result in the game slowing down as you have to look up the rules for the certain spell you're casting. That is not wrong. It might just be a bit of a drag.
But how does a wizard keep track of all their spells when there's so many? Why, in fact, in their spellbook, where they keep all their spells ready to prepare every single day, this spellbook makes it possible to copy spells from scrolls and other wizards' spellbooks into your own in order to make them part of your arsenal. And this feature is also very valuable for a DM, making them able to reward the wizard with new spells instead of just magic items and gold. Beware though, you need to keep track of your spellbook if it gets destroyed or you lose it.
What does a wizard without a spellbook do? Do they become a fighter? Another fun thing about the wizard is that you also get to choose a subclass. There is at least one subclass for every school of magic for the wizard, and some more beyond this. This lets you further specialize in what type of magic you want to cast and be the best at, and it will most likely play into which spells you choose for your wizard. You might choose to be a powerful, destructive and deadly evocation wizard that, as we said, slings fireballs and other spells of course, but I mean. Or you can choose to go the other way and be an abjuration wizard to specialize in spells that protect your party instead. Then we also have subclasses that specializes in illusions, transmutations and even sword wielding, blade singing namely.
Choosing a subclass does not set your character in stone though. You can still choose all other wizard spells that are available for the class. Though illusionist solutions will always be the best.
So, Philip, what does a wizard bring to the table outside of combat?
The wizard is one of the two classes that use intelligence as their main stat. This makes them able to bring out nature, history, religion, and investigation checks to the party.
And last but not least, the wizard will be a specialist in the Arcana skill. So all in all, the wizard is great both in combat and out of combat. They have one slight drawback though, and that is that they don't have much health. They are actually rather squishy. So if you want to improve your wizard's survival chances, take some defensive spells or boost your constitution score. That is also great to keep up your powerful spells.
So, if you want to play a spell casting prodigy, try the wizard. Number 3 on our list is the fearsome yet intriguing Warlock. This is a very unique class for several different reasons.
First and foremost, one of the signature features of the Warlock is their pact with an otherworldly patron. This pact is the source of the Warlock's power, and in some ways it's a bit similar to how a cleric communes with its god and how a paladin might draw strength from his oath. But the difference with the Warlock is that their bond with their patron is perhaps even more intimate and more palpable, and might play in a lot to the campaign you're playing. If you listen to people who played a Warlock, you will hear lots of stories where they didn't get their power voluntarily. Maybe they didn't even know they were a Warlock from the start. And maybe, just maybe, their patron came to haunt them.
The Warlock is not only a strong, but a very special spellcaster and has a lot of unique rules for their spellcasting. But before we get to that, let's talk about one of the best, if not the best, damaging cantrip in the entirety of D&D 5e. Eldritch Blast.
Eldritch Blast is a straightforward damage-dealing cantrip. The player makes a ranged spell attack, and if it hits the target takes 1d10 force damage, which is a very, very rare type of damage in D&D 5e. As your Warlock levels up, you get to shoot more and more bolts of Eldritch energy, and you can also pick Eldritch invocations that further strengthens this cantrip. There are invocations that lets the Eldritch Blast deal more damage, push foes, pull foes, and do a lot of different things to control the battlefield.
The Warlock has a very low amount of spell slots, only starting with 1 on level 1 and gaining their 4th and final on level 17. Even though they are few, they are always regained on a short rest, and they are always of the highest possible level that the Warlock can have. This means that if your highest spell slot is of 3rd level, all of your spells will be 3rd level. However, this only goes on up until level 5 spell slots.
Don't worry though, your Warlock will be able to cast some of the most powerful spells in the game, that is spells of the 9th level. But for a Warlock to cast these more powerful spells, they have a class feature called Mystic Arcanum, which lets them cast spells of 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th level once per day. And to circle back to the Eldritch invocations a Warlock gets to choose, they can, besides giving the Warlock passive effects and other special features, kind of circumvent this problem with having few spell slots, as you can get to cast more spells depending on which evocation you choose, and you can also cast some of them for free.
As you might have noticed, the Warlock is quite a complicated class, with a lot of special abilities and features, which might be hard to keep track on. So try to make sure that you have a clear plan on how you want your Warlock to turn out, or plan ahead a little bit at least.
Another thing we can't avoid to mention as well is that though Warlocks can cast the highest level spells, they can't cast any spells at rituals, unless you choose one specific pact boon and one certain Eldritch invocation. But that might limit your options if you want to choose something else.
In our D&D games where we have had a player character be a Warlock, their patrons have often been unfathomable, huge and mysterious. However, in your game, you might want to play a Warlock where your patron is a little bit more closer than you'd like.
Yeah, something big and unfathomable is great for mystery and such, but imagine being a satyr with a Fae patron actually being your mother or father. Number 2 on our list of top 5 favorite classes in D&D 5e is the Master of Social Interactions and Performances, the Bard. The Bard is a great class to play if you want to excel in social encounters and support your allies, both on the battlefield and outside.
When you make a Bard, you get to choose 3 musical instruments of which you are proficient with, which you use to perform but also use as a focus when spellcasting, or why not both?
The Bard can use their proficiency with these instruments together with their spellcasting to help their friends in difficult situations, but also to insult their enemies, or perhaps seduce them.
But even when you're not in a social scenario, you might find that the Bard has a lot to bring to the table, with its feature Jack of all trades and, most importantly, Bardic inspiration. You might not be able to open that door, but your rogue might be able to, with a little encouraging song, or even your fighter if being urged to kick it down.
Yeah, the Bardic inspiration really is a great feature. It allows you to add at least a d6 to any ability check of your allies, and they get to keep this bonus for 10 minutes until they really need to use it. You can also add this bonus to an attack roll or a saving throw.
The Bard is a full spellcaster with a big arsenal of spells to choose from, and even though they might not do the most damage, they can affect the entire battlefield, friends, allies, and enemies alike, in different ways than just dealing damage or healing. Some examples of these are calm emotions, hypnotic pattern, or why not fear.
However, we can't forget to mention that the Bard gets a feature called Magical Secrets, where they get to pick spells from other classes' spell lists. This means that even though the Bard's spell list doesn't include the most damage-dealing spells or some other favored spells in the D&D community, you could still pick up Fireball, Lightning Bolt, Counterspell, and other amazing spells that they miss out on.
In our games, playing a Bard has been really fun. You feel like you have something to do in every situation and something to bring to the table at all times. And at a certain level, everything I say becomes the truth.
When we were discussing our picks for this video, we both chose the same class as number 1. And that is the amazing Cleric. Now, why is it that we like this class so much, Philip?
There are many reasons why, some of them being that they have an enormous amount of spells they can choose from, and being able to choose which ones they want to use on a daily basis.
The class also has a strong framework for role-playing, as the Cleric has a close bond with their god, which gives the DM great opportunity to intervene on the player's behalf.
An important thing to remember is that a Cleric is nothing without the god who gives them their powers. The Cleric class has a large pool of different subclasses, only rivaled by the Wizards in variety, some of which are very strong, unique, or interesting choices. These different subclasses gives the Cleric additional spells that are always prepared, and some of which are outside of the Cleric's usual spell list.
Yeah, and if you pick one of the more martially focused subclasses, you can even get to wear heavy armor and use martial weapons. So depending on what subclass you choose, that can support a great variety of different playstyles. You can be a strong melee combatant, a supporter from afar, healer, maybe even a stealthy infiltrator. Another notable class feature the clerics get is their channel divinity. This feature lets the cleric turn undead, and they also have another use depending on what subclass you have chosen. This can, for example, be for a forge cleric to create things out of metal, or for a knowledge cleric to gain proficiency in different types of skills for a limited amount of time.
One important thing to look out for when playing a cleric is to be very clear of what kind of cleric you want to play. All clerics have access to the most powerful healing spells in the entire game, and the party might look to you for healing at all times if you don't tell them otherwise.
Yeah, this type of expectation on a cleric might cause some tension in the party, if they think that you should always be there to heal them, but you just want to be a vengeful acolyte of the Tempest domain. So make sure to communicate this clearly to your friends. This concern aside, however, it is always nice to be able to pick up a fallen ally between slaying 2 of your foes yourself.
All in all, the cleric is a very powerful and very varied class which can fill almost every role there is in a party.
Yeah, it's great. If you haven't tried it, play a cleric. These were our top 5 favorite D&D 5e classes. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe.
What are your favorite classes in D&D 5e? Tell us in the comments below.